So, welcome to our interesting series talk about inspiring women in raw material sector. And the speaker for today's session is Mrs. Magali Anderson, and she is here with us already. And we are excited to have her talk and inspire us for today. Before moving to the session itself, I would like to give the content of today's talk, which is first the introduction about EIT raw materials alumni and EIT women, and then I'll hand over the floor to Mrs. Magali Anderson, and we will have a question and answer session later after the talk, and we will have a wrap up. So EIT stands for European Institute of Innovation and Technology, which has a lot of knowledge information center, which we call as KICS, and we belong to EIT Raw Materials KIC, and it also has EIT Raw Materials Alumni, where we get together and share our thoughts and knowledge about the raw materials sector. And it also supports a lot of startups where you can ask for funding for your startups, and then you can always communicate with other EIT members for knowledge. And EIT Women is a cross-cutting kick where it involves women from different kicks, those who help each other for motivation and inspiration. And this talk series is organized together with EIT Women and EIT Raw Materials alumni. So I can't wait more to hear from Mrs. Magali Anderson. So I don't want to take much of the time of today's talk. I hand over the floor to Mrs. Anderson so she can continue.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction. I have some slides. So first of all, good morning and good afternoon, wherever people listening are from. I have some slides, but before I share, let me keep that open so we see each other better, and explain who I am and where I come from. So I'm a French citizen originally, and I hold a mechanical engineer. Now, more than 30 years ago, a long time ago now, after I graduated with my mechanical degree, I decided to, I wanted something, I didn't know what I wanted, but I wanted something that was not routine in my life. So I wanted kind of, I guess, a bit of a crazy life, and I got it. And right after my degree, I left to Nigeria to work as a field engineer on offshore rigs. So I was basically the only woman at the middle of 80 men at the middle of the sea. And it's one of those experiences, I like to call it, what doesn't kill you make you stronger. So it was very difficult, not just because I was 22, not just because I was in the only woman in tough environment, but more than that, I was alone all the time because there was no other woman in the community in my working group. There was no internet at the time. There was no way to communicate. So you really had to fight by yourself. And all my life, I've been, after that, being climbing the ladder of the oil and gas industry, which I left only 5 years ago. And quite often I was the first woman, the only woman, et cetera, et cetera. So even though it was not as tough as the first experience, was always there. And that's why I've been passionate about women in the industry for all these years, because I have lived it at a time where I would have found it helpful that someone explained to me what I should do, how to help me, etc. Almost 5 years ago, I moved to Lafarge-Holcim as the head of health and safety. Before that, the type of job I had was very much business oriented. For example, I was a general manager for Angola, for Schlumberger. I was the head of Europe. I was a VP maintenance for the group, etc. All kind of. My last job for Schlumberger, I was in charge of the manufacturing hub of China for the full company. And I moved to to Holcim, trying to get used to the new name. I moved to Holcim almost 5 years ago as head of health and safety. And then a year and a half ago, I joined the executive committee as chief sustainability officer. And 4 months ago, they added the innovation to my title. So it's not the topic of the day, even though if you have questions about it, I'm more than happy to answer it. But It's a super journey where not only we look at sustainability, but also looking at how innovation and sustainability can get together and do 1 + 1 = 3 or 4, and that's my current challenge. So I will now share my screen, and here we are. Let me see if I can manage to put it on the presentation mode. Can you all see my screen, and is it all presentation mode?
Yeah, now it is.
Okay, so what I wanted to talk about today is a few elements of why do we need gender diversity in the work environment, and particularly in the industry. And I always talk about the 5 whys. And the first why is economic performance. Today, I think it's been very recognized by everybody. Most people understand that having a diverse, a mixed team, and when I talk about diversity, by the way, it's about women, but it's not only about women. It's also about where you come from in the country, your social background. It's just different way of thinking. And it's a very important thing, and I will come back on it a bit later. But when, there is about the performance, and the performance shows that we've seen it, and we see it at every crisis, that the lower the gender gap, the more profitable the companies are. And there's many studies that are talking about it. I'm not going to show all the studies here because again, it's not the things, but it is about that. Now, the box on the left-hand side is not just about economic performance, it's also about moving abroad. And why I brought that is because if you want to have 0 gender gap, and if you want women to go climb in the industry, in the career, what you really find quite often is that there's a lot of myth that needs to be killed. And one of the myths is women don't like to work abroad. And in a company like mine, for example, like Holcim, working abroad is part of the things that helps you climbing the ladder of your career. For Schlumberger, clearly, if you were never ready to have an expatriation job, you were very unlikely to go up the ladder, because that's how you get exposed, that's how you understand the businesses, etc., etc. Now, there's always, and just recently, I was helping the daughter of a friend of mine who was doing a thesis on the master's, actually women expatriation. And why do we think women don't want to expatriate themselves? And in fact, the conclusion, and we see it here, is that the conclusion is it's all myth to think that women would not want, that the husband will not follow if they have a husband, that the family, they have to deal with the family, with the kids, because of that they won't want to move, etc. So I was certainly a bit of a pioneer when I expatriated myself 32 years ago, but the reality is the vast majority of women, or at least the same percentage as men, are willing to move abroad for a job. And either they have a family or not doesn't make such a big difference. So I thought it was important to talk about that. I wanted to talk about the recruiting, which is a point 2. It's today, when you don't recruit ladies for any job, whatever job category we're talking about, what you actually do is you do not touch a talent pool of 50%. You ignore 15% of your talent pool. And that's, for me, is absolutely crazy. I don't understand why people do that. And it's for all level. So I'm going to talk about maybe something that you are not used to. I have a project that I've started in Holcim, which I'm quite passionate about, which is called Women on Wheels. And it's actually women truck drivers. So because we always talk about how do women go up the ladder and how do they become VP and president and whatever, and the glass ceiling, but we have to think of women in all part of the jobs. And if you think about truck drivers, today there is a true shortage of truck drivers. But if I take the French statistic, only 4% of them are women. And it's like, why? I mean, nowadays, trucks are made for people who maybe don't have the same physical strength than before. I won't say they are fully automatized, but a lot. Women, you could challenge that, but I'm telling you, and statistics show it, they are better drivers. Again, it's another myth to say women are not as good drivers. And they are very reliable, and it's a great job where you wouldn't have necessarily bosses and so on. So why I'm saying that is because when you talk about recruiting, you have to think of the entire ladder from your truck driver all the way to your VP. Now, the social performance challenge, and here, if you see, you have. So I'm just changing my things because I'm hiding half of my slide. It's about what the culture brings. I say a lot, very regularly, that what women ask for, men ask for it 10 years later. Because when women say, you know, let's stop having super late meeting because I want to have a bit of a family life, well, if you think about it, more and more men are asking for it. So we are pioneering on the social performance, where in terms of bringing, when you have a more mixed team, you will see usually a better social climate, the company culture will improve. And again, diversity fosters respect. You have to be respecting each other. And that's something that then influences everybody. But also what I thought was very interesting in that study here is that when you look at the progress on gender diversity, not only you see a progress with women, but you see a progress with men. When you look at men who are more ambitious, asking for more job, etc. So that's why it's so important when we talk about diversity that we all work together on it, because it's not a woman problem, it's everybody's problem. And by the way, here's a picture of a lady truck driver. As I was saying, I'm in charge of innovation now for Holcim. And think about it. If you take the same population of people coming from the exact same place, the exact same universities, and the exact same background, how innovative can you be? They will all have the same ideas. They will all come up with the same way of looking at things. True innovation comes from the fact that you put together people who think very differently, and the more differently they think, the better. And I think the numbers are very staggering myself. The fact that the innovation revenue of mix of diverse teams or companies with diverse teams in their management is actually almost a double compared to the others. And if that's not an incentive to do it, it should. So it's really, I mean, but again, back to what I was saying earlier, it's total diversity, is diversity of background, diversity of thinking. And I will say, I will make a little side comment about it, and I will talk about myself. As I explained earlier, when I look about my background, I guess I should certainly be able to call myself a pioneer. And pioneers are actually dangerous people. They're dangerous people because they are there to open the trail. So for that, they are useful. But someone like me, when I grew within the company, all my models were men, all of them. So you tend to replicate what is around you, because that's how that's the only model you have in front of you, is the people around you. So today, if we were, you know, trying to make a caricature of management style, you could pretty much say that my management style is quite masculine. So am I truly bringing diversity outside the fact I'm a woman, I have got long hair, and sometimes I wear dresses? I would actually question it myself. Am I not bringing enough diversity? So it's not the pioneers who are bringing the diversity, it's a woman who will follow. Because then they don't need to be as strong, because now they're not the first one. They don't have to fight all the stereotypes, because the pioneers have done it for them. And it's very important. The followers, or the next generation, if I can call it that, followers might not sound so nice, are actually, for me, more important than the pioneer, because they are the one who are going to bring the true diversity. But it's important for people like me to recognize that. And it's important for people like me to nurture women with completely different leadership style. So Diversity is about different leadership style, and that's about bringing people, again, completely different, not just a woman who looks like a woman, but behave very much like a man. And of course, I had to talk about sustainability and looking at what happened with the companies in terms of how they are being rated according to the number of women on the board. And again, there's a clear correlation about the board gender diversity and the ESG score. And it's not because the ESG scoring is actually giving you more points if you have a diverse board. That would be too easy. No, it's really the way the company thinks and the way the company welcomes diversity. So if I take the case of Holcim, we have 3 women at our board, and at the executive committee, also 3 women out of 10. So we are 30% women at the executive committee, which I think is very high in the type of industry where we are. Now, after talking about that, what can we do? And, you know, I was talking how the beginning of my career, and as I said, there's something that I missed at that point is advice, someone who could help me, who could give me advices, who could at least listen to me to start with. I was missing that, but again, remember, no internet, so I couldn't look for people like this on internet, which of course didn't help. And since then, I've been writing. I wrote a book which is online. If you speak French, I didn't translate it, which is it's something a bit autobiographic, but where I try to share some tips. But I also write articles. If on a good day, I write 1 article per month. I'm not so prolific because I do that on the side of my job. And those articles this time exist in both English and French. You find them on my website. You find my website on it's called La Pétroleuse, but you find it on my LinkedIn profile quite easily. Or if you type my name, I guess you would find it as well. Where I try to share tips, share things, either for the women themselves, which would be how to face a situation, what, but also on the other side, as a manager, what can you do? So my last series is called, it's called Tips on Increasing the Number of Women in Your Team, how to make a team with more women. And I thought I would share that with you because if you want to work in a more inclusive company, then what can you do? What can you do at your level? And you can really do that, I think, at most level of middle management. So the first one is recruiting. Sounds a bit silly, but if you don't recruit, first start by recruiting women, well, you won't have women in your organization, as simple as that. Now, so what do you hear when you talk about recruiting women? You always hear people saying, I would love to recruit women, but I don't find any. I mean, how many times you guys have heard that? I couldn't find any. Then you should really question, what image is my company projecting? How come women are not applying? And this is where, so that tip is talking about how do you try to project an image. I'm not saying judging the company because that's a bit too difficult, but at least project an image that will bring women, or that will attract women to come and apply for jobs. And then after that, it becomes a virtuous circle, right? When you start having more women, then the company culture changes, like I was saying earlier, and then you attract more women, etc. But first of all, you need to make sure your job advertising is inclusive. You wouldn't believe the number of job ads that I read, and when you read it, you think, no woman would think it's for me. That's not possible. But also, you have to think of one of the traits most women have, not all, but most, again, I'm trying not to be too caricatural, is the fact that usually a woman would apply to a job only if she has 100% of the requirement of that job. You know, you would apply for promotion only if you are absolutely sure you can do it. Men don't. Men, if they have 20%, they go for it. They take risk. And actually, more often than we think, they're lucky. And sometimes, unfortunately, we realize after that they were clearly not ready for that job. So in your job requirement, in the job ads, don't make your requirement crazy, because by definition, you will push off women. So just put the minimum one. And then during the interview process, again, the majority of our managers are men, so they're the one interviewing. We tend to recruit people who look like us. That's a bias. That's something you can't do anything about it. I am the best, so I want to recruit someone who is like me because that person will be as good as me. So if you are a man, it's likely that a person like you will tend to be a man, no matter what you do. So you need to understand your own bias and fight it. And that's why one thing that you can do, which is a super easy trick to apply, is ask other people to interview, but with different, not your brother who's been working with you for the last 30 years and think exactly like you, because that's not going to help. And the last one is, when I do a recruiting of anybody, I always, if there is not one woman in the list of people I'm going to interview, I am not interviewing. So I force my HR or whoever organization is in charge of recruiting to go beyond the easy path of taking the obvious candidates and go for maybe less obvious candidates on the paper. But then when you do the recruiting, I don't do positive discrimination at all, but at least the woman is on the starting line of the race. At least she's there, her or more than one. The tip 2 is welcoming diversity. And that's really about when you are in an environment, in a male-dominated environment, and you start recruiting women, it's actually not that easy for the first one. Back to the pioneer thing I was talking about. So it's important that you think about it, that you don't just dump them in the new team and leave them there. You need to make sure, of course, it doesn't happen anymore, hopefully. But when I first arrived on the first rig, I would go to the maintenance shop because I needed parts, and they had calendar pages of naked women. Well, I would assume most women will not be facing that, but I can tell you, it can, as a young lady, as a young girl that I was, makes you extremely uncomfortable, and it makes you pretty difficult after to talk to the guys and try to, be considered on an equal terms. So, but the other thing is, try not to leave women alone, because it can be quite tough. Even if if the team is super friendly, etc., it's still tough. It's good to be two, so you can share. Where you feel something is not normal, you have someone who can talk to, you can open up to someone. So basically, if you have 10 services and you recruit 10 women, don't put one in each. It's better to put 2 in 5, if that makes sense. The everyday sexism is terrible. That's really something that you need to stop, because it happens just all the time, and you don't think about it, especially if you never had women in the team, and you don't think about it because no one has highlighted to you, no one has explained to you why what you are doing is sexism. And there is a lot of things that we can do, because it can be positive and it can be negative. It's not necessarily actually always negative, but the positive would be the fatherhood. I'm going to protect you, you little woman. You need my protection. You need my help. You need me to explain to you more than I would for a man. Well, not only as a woman, it's like, well, I'm a professional, I don't need that. So you take it bad, but also it undermines your competency, because then the other people start looking at you as the person who is protected by such and such, not as an individual who has her own strengths. So actually, positive sexism is almost as bad as negative. And or other things such as, because you have kids, I don't think you can take that job, or making jokes on the fact that you go home early to pick up your kid from school, when you wouldn't make that joke to a man if there are men that go and pick up their kids from school as well, and more and more, and that's great. The other one is emotional. Seriously, sorry, I hope I'm not going to shock anyone here, but I remember it has happened several times in my life, in my career, where I would be upset about something, a work-related upset, whatever. And then I would start, showing I was upset, and the person would say, "Is that the wrong time of the month?" Like, if as a woman, the only reason why I could be upset is because it was the wrong time of the month. No, I'm upset because what you are delivering is not right and I'm not happy about it, or whatever the reason is professional. So those little sentences are the type of sentence that we actually don't even pay attention to them because they happen all the time. And I think it's super important that via training on bias, whichever way, but watch it, watch the everyday sexism and listen to women who come and tell you that they have suffered from it. And that goes with my tip 4, which is zero tolerance. And I mean zero tolerance. So, you know, I said just like alcohol, because I like to give that example. You know, when in France, we're allowed to drink, we are allowed 0.5 gram of alcohol in the blood to drive. So when you go at a party, it's like, can I have 1 glass, 2 glasses? When is the last time I had a glass? When am I driving back? And you start really, when the reality is, if it was zero tolerance and you were saying, I don't drink at all, then there's no more question. You don't ask, is it gray? Is it white? Is it black? I don't know, I'm not sure. So now, having said that, I am not against people having a glass of wine at a dinner before taking the car. That's perfectly all right. But I'm just trying to explain what I mean by zero tolerance. And really, it is so important because there's several reasons why you need zero tolerance. First of all, because where do you put the threshold? What is acceptable, what is not? And when you make little jokes, it can be, you know, what can be acceptable for you can be completely unacceptable for someone else because you don't know what type of trauma that person have been through. You don't know what the life story of that person is. Someone who got attacked one day will be very sensitive to any joke on harassment or etc. When someone who hasn't might not be as much. So zero tolerance is very important. And the good news about zero tolerance, and that's why I was taking the example of alcohol, is that there's no more question. You don't discuss it. So the thing is, let me give you an example. And this zero tolerance has to be preached at all levels. And it really has to be a ton from the top. When I was the general manager for Angola, for Schlumberger, I had passed on the message that anything happening to anybody that was, you know, non-ethical or sexist, etc., I wanted to be made aware immediately, no matter who that person was and no matter how small the incident was. And one day they came to see me. So you know, that was ladies that were working on an offshore rig, again, same than me, so than me in the past. And this lady, she cracked, like she collapsed. And she was very upset because she was super strong and she took that collapsing as a weakness. And what had happened is she was on the rig and there were people making stupid jokes. Like one day she found her boots painted pink or just stupid jokes. And she was so upset because she felt like, why did I crack for something so stupid? They're little jokes, they're not nasty. Well, they might not be nasty, but the repetition on it, when you're on a rig in the middle of the sea with 80 men, becomes very heavy very soon. So she came, so her boss sent her to me because he knew what I'd said. And the fact that I took seriously what she said, the fact that I didn't laugh at her and say, oh, come on, this is funny, where is your sense of humor type of thing? The fact that I took it seriously and the fact that I acted, so I called the manager of that rig and I said, hey, that's what happened. And the guy took it super seriously as well. And he said, you know, the person will, I am happy, I will terminate the person if you ask me to. And herself didn't want to because she was not sure of the name, etc., etc. But the fact we took it seriously and took action made a big difference. And I think it's very important because so many things are done under the famous humor. And you know, I'm French and French loves humor. I mean, it's something that we do a lot. But at the end, what I always tell people is, would you make that joke to your mom? Would you make that joke to your sister? Would you make it to your wife? And if the answer is no, then you should not make that joke. Then you should not make that comment. And it's really, again, that's for me super important because it's, if you want to create an inclusive environment where everyone feels free to work and feel good about working, there is no other choice than having a complete zero tolerance. And that's my last article. So we stop there because I'm only on tip 5. I still have the other 5 tips to write. Is about talking. And, you know, we can talk about man interrupting. I'm sure you all know that, which is when you're in a meeting and a woman talk and men would tend to interrupt her. And there's many studies, again, showing that this happens way more than the other way. But again, it's back to diversity. When you're in a meeting, I'm sure you all noticed it, but you tend to always hear the same people talking. So people who are the more extrovert, the people who are the more comfortable to talk, etc. And there are some people who never talk. And quite often, those are the women. And they don't talk either because every time they talk, they get interrupted, or because back to my first tip on recruiting, because they feel that if they're not super expert in a topic, they don't want to comment on it. When again, men don't hesitate if they're not super expert. You can still have an opinion. So as you have to watch that as a person. As a manager, it's easier because you have more power, but even not if you're not a manager, you really have to watch that. Who is talking, who is not talking? And if you have people who are not talking, what I do is quite simple. I just go around the room and say, I haven't heard you. Can you give me your opinion? And I just make sure everyone talks. And I make sure if someone talks that no one interrupts that person. But why it's so important is not only because, back to my diversity I was talking about, if you want a true diversity in everything you do, well, you need to hear the opinion of everybody. If you only hear the opinion always of the same men, then where's your diversity? But the other reason is because when you think of promotion of people, who are the people who comes to your mind as the people that you hear all the time? Because you know them, you know their opinion. When the people who don't talk, well, you tend to think that if they don't talk, it's because they have nothing interesting to say. And because of that, then they won't be in your mind when you will be looking at the next promotion, next job. Sorry about that. So anyway, you go to my website and you will see the next tips when I will be writing them. But I think I just wanted to give some few things that it's not that complicated. If you look at my 5 tips, none of them requires money. None of them requires time. It's really just being aware of the problem and being conscious of it and being careful about it. That's all it is. And then you do it. It's not that complicated. Now, I just wanted to finish just quickly on what we do at Holcim. And we have signed the Women Empowerment Principle, which really is about what you see there: education and training, health, well-being, safety, etc. We are very clear that we are an equal opportunities employer, that we make zero distinction on basis of race, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, etc. It's written everywhere, which means that if there is any evidence, any time that someone is not respecting those principles, then that person will be blamed or maybe will not be welcome in our company. So it's we're very public about it. It's very strong. And then if you look at the women representation, well, I gave you, so we are not, we're actually board and executive committee is a bit higher than senior level management, but again, we are a very male-dominated industry, so it will, 17% is not very high, but I don't think many companies are so high in that prospect. But we do have a goal, which is to go to 25% by 2025. So it's almost 50% more in 5 years. So from 17 to 25. So it's quite a big jump, and it will require a lot of work, and it will require doing all my tips, which is recruiting people, giving them a good environment, etc., etc. I mean, the last one is on the non-management levels, all the levels below. Then in the total company as an average, we are 14%. And that's why I like my Women on Wheels program that I was talking about, because I think we always talk about graduated women with senior careers, but we should also talk about having people working in the cement plant and other places. And I think I'm finished. I guess I shall stop sharing now. Yeah. So we can open for Q&A.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. It was really inspiring and many tips, and I hope the listeners would take up those tips in their career as well. And we keep looking for your future articles also about the other 5 tips, maybe. So now the forum is open for Q&A. Please go ahead with your questions if you have any. So
I'll start, I guess.
Oh, yeah, please carry on. I can ask later.
I think you started, Isabel, but now you are muted.
I'm from Calgary, Canada.
We don't hear you, Isabel.
Excuse me?
Your voice is breaking.
Probably my problem.
No, we don't hear you.
Maybe if you write down your question.
Stable, I guess.
Yeah, it's possible. You can write it in the chat so I can read it for you.
I'll try. I know. Oh.
No.
Isabel, we really can't hear you. Sorry. You need to write it in the chat, unfortunately.
Can I ask a question in the meantime?
Please.
Probably somebody else goes and I'll write.
If I could ask a question in the meantime, we've established a women empowerment group in the UK in aggregate industries, and there's a lot of interest in women's health issues. So fertility, endometriosis, menopause, and we've created a role of a women's health officer. It's in addition to someone's normal role, but she's taken it on board like we would have in the UK. We have mental health first aiders, and this is someone that is got an interest in women's health and communicating that. I wondered whether Magali or anyone else on the call had any thoughts or initiatives about how to bring that to life to the benefit of everyone in the organization.
I actually think it's a great idea. I've never seen it before, so I won't be able, maybe other people can contribute and say if they have experience. I think it's a great idea because I regularly read about the fact that there's a lot of women illnesses that if there were men illnesses, we would certainly be much more advanced in fixing them. And some of the ones that you have mentioned were clearly on that basket that is not considered as serious enough. I mean, yeah, bad time of the month again, and so you have some pain, so what's your problem? It's really, I think the awareness, it's funny because I have two grown-up daughters, 24 and 26, and one of them is terrible pain when it's that time of the famous time of the month. And she was asking me, Mom, how come companies don't give a off day to all women, one off day to take per month? And I'm like, frankly, I think you're right, but I don't think it's something, I've never seen it anywhere. So
this is
I don't know if
ground.
people have seen it.
It's new ground, and it's sort of, if someone has a miscarriage or it's interesting when we've surveyed members of people who want to be part of this group. It's come out quite strongly as something that they would like to see greater awareness, and I guess it just become more normal.
Yeah, because I think really for me, there's two categories of topics, if I can call it that way. There are the topics that are truly women topic because men don't have it. And that's maternity. That's the type of topic you're talking about. To my knowledge, no man has even gone pregnant except Schwarzenegger, and we're not sure, it's not scientifically proven. So for me, you have to address them differently because maternity is something that needs to be addressed at company level. A lot of women, their careers stop dropping after their first maternity leave, not just because they have been absent, but also because a lot of employers consider that once you have had a baby, you will be less disponible, that they will hesitate to give you more responsibility because obviously you have a kid, so etc., etc. And my previous company, Schlumberger, who was a precursor on a lot of topics, actually had a maternity leave process to make sure it doesn't happen, to make sure that the woman was accompanied not just when she was leaving, but also when she was coming back. And some women after the maternity leave might choose to slow down their career. Why not? I mean, of course, it's a choice. You can do that. But if you don't want to slow down your career, then the company shouldn't push you to do that. So there was really kind of a career review before the person leaves and after the person leaves, with a guarantee to find the same job, but not just a paper guarantee, a true one and a cool. And so that's truly only women have that, if I can call it that way. And then
Yes.
you have the other things which are pure cultural. I mean, once the baby is out, is as much the kid of the father and the mother. And in my own example, my husband has changed more diapers than I have. And clearly, to this day, my grown-up daughters, when they need a shoulder to cry, they call their dad. When they need an advice on work, they call me. So the role as a parent is not predetermined. It's what you do about it. And that's why, for me, we should always separate the two. And in the work day, in your professional environment, the only true difference between men and women are those illnesses you were talking about and the maternity leave, nothing else. The rest is what culture makes us do. But I don't know if other people want to express themselves about the health and well-being of women.
So we do have other question. Can we take up that from the chat? So it's from Isabel. So she couldn't ask it by herself because of some technical issues. What would be the next steps to ensure women diversity? That is her question.
So I mean, it really depends of the companies, because all companies are different. And for me, there are two things that you should always try to address. Well, the ones I mentioned earlier are several things, not just two. The one I mentioned earlier, environment, inclusive environment, recruiting, etc., etc. I am myself clearly in favor of quotas, and I am strong on that opinion. So a lot of people, they say, oh, no, quotas are horrible. We should give incentive, strong incentive with like bonus. I say, okay, so what's the definition of a quota? It's a bit like, you shouldn't say vegan anymore because it's a bad word. You should say plant-based diet. It's a way better word, but it's the same. So I think for me, quotas are the quickest way to reach results because it forces people. And what do quotas do? Let me tell you why I think it's a good thing. It's because people think, oh no, as a woman, I don't want to be a quota woman because then people will think I was put in that job because I'm a woman. Well, it's bullshit. Sorry. It's not true. It never happens. Companies do not put incompetent people in a role just because they're a woman. Because if they put an incompetent person in a role, then as a company, you are going to fail. And companies can't take that chance. They can't take the chance of failing. So it doesn't happen. You don't put an incompetent woman in a role just because she's a woman. What it forces you to do is to reevaluate the way you do your succession planning, how you attract talents, everything I was talking about earlier. If you are told you need to bring women to your organization, then you are going to find a way to attract them, because that's why they're not coming. It's not because they don't exist, because you have not managed to attract them. Or when you do a promotion, you are going to be looking for the non-obvious candidate that I was talking about. And I call them my talented, silent ladies. It's all these super talented ladies all around the organization. They're super good, but they don't make noise, so no one knows them. And that's why we never think about promoting them. If you have a quota, now you are pushing your HR organization to look outside the box and find different ways, different talent pool. And that's the only way to truly diversify, because if you continue going in the same talent pool that you have been going on for the last 30 years, you will never diversify. And again, I was saying earlier, I'm French. France put a quota for board. It's a law called Copé-Zimmermann, and we just celebrated the 10 years anniversary. There's now 42% of board members in France are women. which is, I think, the second best score in the world after Sweden. And today, the result of it is not just where do we get them, which was the start, but the result of it now is they say the boards are much more rich in terms of exchanges because the type of discussion are very different. And no one now is criticizing that law anymore. So I would say, and after the next step is, it really depends on the organization where you are. I think already if you do my 5 tips, it's you will already do quite a lot of progress.
So yeah, Isabel says for that, like in reality, I feel for the same job, a woman has to be in the 130% skill set against a male counterpart. And it's an ongoing demonstration of capabilities.
So the skill set story is, you're right. And, you know, I was, someone interviewed me recently for my MD and to talk about the imposter syndrome. I don't know if you all know the imposter syndrome. It's the fact of feeling you are a fraud. You shouldn't be in that job. That, oof, no one has ever noticed it, but in fact, I'm useless. I shouldn't be there. And that person asked me if I had ever suffered from it. I said, oh, I've suffered from it every single time I changed job. Every single time I was given a new job, I was like, you know, even the last one, the innovation, I was like, oh my God, I can't do that. I'm not competent to take the innovation. But because I know I have that bias, I fight it myself. So I'm like, you know, sometimes I'm like, stop being a woman, stop being a stupid woman to myself, because I convince myself. So, but what is even more important is for organizations to understand it. So I always say, you know, when you offer a job to a woman and she tells you no, that's the only time where you should challenge her no. Any other time she tells you no, you should always respect the no. But if you're offering a job to a woman and she tells you no, you should try to understand why. And if she comes up, so, you know, let me give you a story. When I was in Schlumberger, and I was in charge of Europe, my boss called me one day, the CEO of the company, and said, I'm going to name you VP Marketing. And that's the CEO who wants you to become VP Marketing. And I'm like, wow, I don't even know how to spell the word, seriously. I have no clue what marketing is all about. And now you put me VP Marketing. Really, seriously, no clue. And anyway, I took the job because when you are told the CEO wants to take the job, you don't really have a choice. I took the job and I met the CEO in one of those fairs, because of course, being marketing, I had to go to all those fairs and booths and so on. I met him and he asked me, hey, how are you doing? I said, well, I really want to thank you for offering me the job, but the reality is, next time you push me on the deep end of the swimming pool with big weights, if you could give me a few floaters, it would help. Because seriously, I have no clue. And I was saying that, and same time, I was like, oh, I'm talking to the CEO and I'm just telling him I'm incompetent. And how stupid is that, seriously? But the reality is, I was looking around me and all the other VP marketings, they were all 50 years old, like I was, I think, I forgot how old I was, but quite younger. They're all 50 years old men with big beer bellies that you were used to sign the deals at the bar. And I'm like, I'm so much not that. Why? I mean, I'm a fraud. I can't do that job. But what the CEO told me is several things. First of all, I like the fact you are scared. That means you are going to work hard. And it's actually a good thing. It's a good thing to be afraid of a job because you're going to work hard and you will be super successful. But the second thing he told me is, I actually choose you for that job because you are different. Because I want to bring disruption to that organization and you are my disruptor. So don't change, don't try to grow a big beer belly and that I would have tried not to do, but don't try to be like them because then you would fail what I want you to do. I want you to bring a new way of doing marketing. And that was such an eye-opener. So really, if you feel like you are not fit for a job that you offered, just think, why did the company offer it to you? First of all, they offered it to you because the company knows that you are competent for it. If not, they wouldn't offer it to you, quota or not quota. But also, if you don't look like the ideal profile, there certainly is a reason for it. It's because, you know, we are evolving so much as an organization that it's good to have different profile for different things. I see Gabriela has been raising her hand for a while. Maybe you want to give her.
I would like to ask you your opinion, or if it happens to you in sometimes. You talk that you were a pioneer and as a woman, and that you created a strong character to survive a masculine environment, right? And when it comes to this kind of strong characters, there is sometimes also bias, gender bias, because it turns that you are not diverse because you are strong as a man.
Mhm.
And how do you manage this kind of situations? Because it is happening to me right now, and it's quite
Well,
strange.
it's really what I was trying to explain earlier. I was like that. I think I'm still like that, but now I'm really aware of that. Before I was not aware of it. Now I'm aware of it. Once you're aware, you can try to work on it, and it might not change your character. If that's your character, that's your character. Don't change your character. But I think what's important is the fact that you also promote diversity. So you promote other women who might not have the strengths of character, not making strong characters a requirement. It took me many years to understand that. It's not something that came up soon, but I remember someone telling me, pioneers are the worst enemy of diversity, because they tend to say, I did it myself, why do you need help? And I was a bit like that at the startup, for sure. But then you evolve and you think, no, a woman, or not a woman, anybody, by the way, not just a woman, should manage to go up, to progress in a company because of the talent, because of the hard work, because of all kind of criteria you might have in that company, but not because of strengths. Strength shouldn't be such a criteria. If you're super talented and hard worker, etc., then you should progress. Why shouldn't you? Because and I think once we, as an organization, we understand that, then we start giving chances to people with different leadership. So don't change yourself. You are who you are. I mean, if you change yourself, first of all, certainly you will not succeed, and secondly, you would be super unhappy. but accept the others the way they are, and don't think that it's the only way to do it.
Thank you.
I see a question. Sorry, because I will have to leave you in 7 minutes. Unfortunately, I still have another meeting. I see there's some wholesome people, so I will have a meeting with Geraldine just after, so I can't be late. Another super strong woman of the organization. About the emerging countries. So emerging countries, you know, actually, I've worked a lot in emerging countries. And if you're asking me in Holcim today, what is the most diverse region? I would tell you without any hesitation, Latin America. Latin America is definitely the most diverse region. If you look at the excos of the different Latin American countries, half it's parity. If you look at in the plant, it's the only plant where I met a full maintenance team that was female, etc., etc. So I don't think it's a question of female. And frankly, I'm based here in Switzerland. If you were asking me in a scale of 1 to 10, where is Switzerland in terms of acceptance of diversity and position of the woman, I wouldn't rate them so high, in all fairness. So I don't think it's a question of emerging countries. There's a lot of super strong women in emerging countries. I think it's an overall question as an organization. And you know, when I was traveling as the head of health and safety, I would go and every country I would visit, I would try to have a dinner with a 10, not top women, but 10 women who want it. It's not necessarily top, depends on their age. In each country I would visit, and I've visited a lot of countries. And what amazed me is they all face the exact same problems or challenges, all of them, every country. So I don't believe in that cultural thing. I think, yes, of course, some laws help in some countries, for sure, definitely. I mean, if you're in a country where you can't even work as a woman, and unfortunately, there's still some countries where that happened, definitely it's harder. But outside those exceptions, and hopefully there remain exceptions, yes, exactly. There's a woman CEO in El Salvador and another one in Ecuador. So anyway, Melissa, you're trying to ask a question.
Yeah, well, we used to have a female CEO in El Salvador. Now she's the one in Ecuador. So
yes, that's right. Well, but it was not El
Dolores.
Salvador. She was on the cluster.
Yeah, of the cluster, of course. I just
But if
wanted
you
to
think
ask.
about it, Dolores has been a female CEO in Holcim for how many years now? And there's not many new female CEOs being promoted. So we still have a long way to
No.
go. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
and it was
Melissa,
very
sorry.
inspiring coming to work for a construction material company, having a woman CEO. So that was a great step. I just was curious. Do you think this gender bias is more pronounced in more advanced generations, or do you think newer generations are also growing up with this bias? Because
I'm
that's
not
something.
sure, you know, it's a very complicated question. It's a debate I have with my daughter all the time. So my daughter clearly was raised in an environment where husband and I are fully equal, everything is equal. So her own bias is she thinks that gender equality is a normal thing. And sometimes when she read my article, she's like, aren't you exaggerating? All my friends at school and university, they're all good. What are you doing? What's your problem? But then I tell her, yes, because you're in a bubble. You're in a bubble of, you choose people who looks like you. So I have the impression it's progressing because I look at the friends of my daughters and I have the impression that they're way more advanced than maybe men of my generation. But then I look at those tele-reality shows and I'm like, maybe not. After all, when, you know, whatever The Bachelor or this type of show, and you're like, not sure we have progressed so much. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure. For sure, the more educated, the people who do great studies, I would hope there is an evolution there. But for the rest of the population, I wouldn't be so certain. Don't know if you have a last comment.
We can keep talking, and it is interesting to hear from you, Mrs. Anderson. And even I have a few more questions. Maybe we should take it up after later time with you, considering your busy schedule. And it's really a valuable time for us. And
Now, I'm so sorry I have a meeting right after. If not, I would have been so happy to continue if there was more question. But unfortunately,
yeah.
Need to go.
But thank you so much.
That's exactly what I was saying. No meeting at 7 p.m. You see.
Thank you so much for this dedicated time, and I mean, we know your schedule is so tight, but you made up this time for us.
Yeah, that was a pleasure. Thank you. And go to my blog. I mean, I'm not saying that because I want people to go to my blog, but seriously, some of the article, hopefully you might like.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Bye-bye,
Thank you
everybody.
so much. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's session. See you again next time. Bye-bye. Have a nice summer.
Goodbye.